like to welcome everyone and welcome to this session, which is being sponsored by Writing Relations. We're really pleased to have such a big turnout for this. And we feel that at this time, right across the country, there's so many critical issues that are all related to treaties. And it's really important that we have an understanding of being all treaty people and what that means. And so we have some different speakers to be able to share their thoughts on sovereignty, inherent rights, and what it means to be treaty people. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to another member on the National Steering Committee of Writing Relations, to Michelle Penny, to introduce the folks from Algonquin territory.
Anin, Kwekwe, Sego, hello. My name is Michelle Penny. I'm from Treaty 4, Soto Nation. Yellow Quill is my reserve. I have been in Algonquin territory for 20 plus years. So I planted my feet on this ground pretty darn hard. And there is issues that are going on all across Indian territory. But first of all, I'd like to invite Ryder, who is one of the speakers and one of our youth. Ryder Cody is a youth that has the language, speaks 3 languages as a matter of fact. And it's Algonquin, his traditional language, French, and English. He is an amazing young man. I mean, like, I'm out of words to describe him, but I would like Ryder to do an opening for his land. Miigwech.
Kanawik, Minibijak, Miigwech, Gibijak Nogum, Chagwanach, Minibijak Anishinaabe Daki. Hello, everyone. Welcome to unceded Algonquin territory. It's an honor to be here with you all, and I'm looking forward to speaking on this panel. Miigwech.
So I'm going to ask Mariah, who is going to be the other speaker, Mariah Migwans, to do maybe a couple of rounds of one song if possible. Mariah, you are here. Okay, I don't see Mariah. Crap. Okay, she hasn't gotten in yet. So what we'll do is we'll switch over to a story about the moose. And before we start, and we'll get Mariah in here, and we'll get this information get started. Okay. So Adriana, if you want to put the
Yeah. Give me
story
1 second,
on.
please.
Yes, please.
Ani kwekwe bojo, Emily Segay, Indigenous, Zagasamita Indigenous, Makwado. My name is Emily Segay, and I'm here to share a little story with all of you in light of the Moose Moratorium. Long ago, before settler arrival, the Anishinaabe people, the first people, and our animal relations were learning how to coexist on the land. A family of young moose were sitting together and sharing a ceremonial pipe. A father, a mother, their young son, and their young daughter. And as they're sharing this pipe, the parents are instructing their children that the fall is coming, and as all of our animal relations prepare for the colder months, the Anishinaabe people prepare as well. And one of the ways that they must prepare is to gather food for their families to last over the winter. And so the parents describe how, well, hunters were coming from the Anishinaabe people. and that if they saw those hunters or heard them in the bush, that the family should scatter, spread out, and run as far as they can. They'll find each other afterwards. But the young bull, he looks at his family and he says, well, I'm strong and I'm fast. It won't be a problem. So the next morning, the family is out harvesting, and they hear hunters approaching, and they smell them. And the parents instruct their youth to run away in different directions, just how they had explained it the night before. And so the mother and the daughter, they run in one direction, and the father, he takes off as well. But the young bull, so confident in his abilities, he decided he'd play a little game. So he waited there for the hunters to approach. And as they were getting closer, within striking distance, he ran. And he starts running, and he's making really, really good headway, and he's far ahead of the hunters. But the young bull forgot, or maybe didn't realize, that there was a light frost covering the grass. He slipped. The hunters caught up to him, and he was killed. And as the moose laid there, his spirit rose up over his body. And he watched how the Anishinaabe people offered tobacco in exchange for that beautiful gift. He watched as they cried and mourned the death of this sacred animal relation, and gave thanks to the moose and to Creator for providing for their families. The young bull watched as these hunters brought his body back to the community. He watched as they celebrated, as they gave thanks, and as they respectfully treated his body with care. Then, the young bull woke up. It was a dream. And so he goes to his family and he says, I've received a message. I had a dream. And when the hunters came by and shot me, they were respectful. They gave thanks, they offered tobacco, and they brought me back to their community. For this reason, I will give myself up for the humans when they come to harvest. For this reason, I will give my life for them as they respect, love, and honor the life that I will give. I will give myself up so that they may survive. This story not only reminds us of how Mother Earth will always provide, but it reminds us just how generous the moose are. They will always give themselves so that we can live and survive. They will always be true. But just because they are so generous, it does not mean that we need to take their lives. The moose are a very important, so very important source for food for our communities. As the years have progressed, and after settlers' arrival, the people, the humans, have forgotten how to honor those animals. They do not know the Anishinaabe ways. They do not have the teachings. They do not respect the body of the animal or the sacred gift from Creator. But the moose will keep on giving. They have not forgotten. I urge you, if you're listening, to support in any way that you can the Anishinaabe people who are standing to defend our sacred moose. The moose are being disrespected, violated, abused, and killed for the sake of sport. They are not being honored, but mocked. As a lot of you know, I have been selling pins and jewelry to help raise funds for the people who are fighting on the front line. If you would like to purchase a pin and help support the communities, please leave a comment, send me a message, and I will arrange for me to be able to send you a pin or some custom jewelry, whatever you'd like. I've also decided that anything that I sell, be it just, I don't know, floral jewelry, beadwork, any resin work that includes moose imagery and otherwise, all of the proceeds for the rest of the month, or as long as the moose moratorium lasts, will be directly going to the frontline workers. Those who are fighting and defending the land, the people, and the moose. I really don't know what to say now, but miigwech for listening. I hope that the story gave you some insight on why the Anishinaabe people are fighting for the moose. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Miigwech. Thank you for listening.
So with that is a beautiful introduction into our subject tonight for the Algonquin Nations. I was able to spend some time out there this past weekend, and I spent some time with Ryder. And as hopefully we will have Mariah joining us very soon. She's just having a little trouble getting into the room. I'm going to have Ryder start from the very beginning and from a youth perspective as to what the issues are, and to right down to his opinion as to what needs to be done. And also, Ryder, miigwech.
Quick and awake, Mukuni keeps and watch na do Indigenous cousin, Wabag National Mandem, Kundu dem, and a Schnabenin, viewed the set to Ganzivik, Shidish Taganak, Dujiba Muniak, Jekna Magzian. Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Mukuni keeps and watch na do, mais mon nom anglais est Ryder côté Nataway. Je suis Anishinaabe de Kitiganzibi et Lac Rapide. J'habite à Montréal pour étudier au Cégep. Hello everyone, my name is Mukuni Kipzindwach Nadwe. My English name is Ryder Cody Nadwe. The little white wolf is my spirit animal, and I am of the Bear Clan. I'm an Anishinaabe from Kitiganzibi and Rapid Lake, currently living in Montreal to finish my studies at Dawson College. So a little bit about the moose moratorium is in the Parc La Vérandrie and the whereabouts around that area, the moose population has been declining. And we've set up blockades all along the camp, all along the highway, and in different parts of the park to stop hunters from hunting. And to us, it's really important because this is our way of life. This is how we've lived for generations and generations and generations. We don't hunt for sport, we hunt to survive. And we need to protect that moose for the future generations to come. And we also need to protect that moose for those who fought for us, for our ancestors who fought for us before. But the way I see it, it's not just about the moose, it's about the land. It's about reclaiming the land. I don't like to say that the land belongs to us, but more so as an Anishinaabe, it's our duty to protect the land. It's our duty to protect our mother, the earth. And as a youth, I think it's important for us to be there. From my experience, the elders and the adults have asked a lot of youth to stand up and to show support because we're the leaders of tomorrow. We need to be there to learn, not just about, this moose moratorium, but to learn about the language, to learn ceremonies, to learn traditions. It's us who will carry that on and keep passing that on. So it's important for the youth to be there, sit down and talk with elders. You know, the elders, they're our guidance. The elders will show us what path to walk down because they've been through what we're going through. They have the knowledge. And another important part for me and a beautiful thing that I've been seeing throughout this is unity. Unity throughout all the nations. All my life, there's been that divide between Rapid Lake and KZ. And this year, that divide is gone. We've really seen the unity of nations, and not just Kitigan-Zibi and Rapid Lake, but all nations, whether it be Cree, Anishinaabe, Mohawk, Mi'Kmaw, Blackfoot, Navajo, Lakota. We're all one nation. We all come from Turtle Island. We're all from Mother Earth. And in that unity, that's how we strive. That's where we get our power. Together, we are strong. And it's just so beautiful to see all these nations coming together as one. My grandfather always talks about the story of a bowl and a spoon. You know, and the bowl represents Turtle Island, and the spoon represents sharing amongst all nations. We've always shared everything, our resources. But when the white man came, he took that spoon out and put a knife in the bowl. And what that knife did was it divided nations, created conflict. It's time we take that knife out and put the spoon back in. And slowly, we are seeing this with the unity of nations. It's pretty much all I've got to say. I don't know if I'm supposed to say anything else.
No, Mariah has arrived also. And thank you very much for your perspective. I really appreciate it. While you were out there at the camp, you were doing a lot of work, and that's what the youth are doing out there. So we have a lot of elders that are out there guiding the youth. I watched Ryder help put up a teepee that was put up in one of the camps there, and of course hauling wood and taking care of the fires all evening. So they have responsibilities at those camps, and they're directed by the women and the elders. So I would like to have our next speaker, Mariah, and give her view. Mariah is a dancer. She's an artist. She beads, she sings, she does a lot of stuff for her community also, but she's very passionate about this, and she has a lot of opinions about this also. So Mariah, if you'd like to introduce yourself and talk about the situation.
Hi everyone, Kwe Kakana, Mariah Mi'Kmaw Indigenous, Kitigan-Zibi Anishinaabe Donjiba, Ottawa and Donji Makwadora. Hello everyone, I'm from Kitigan-Zibi. I live in Gatineau and I'm part of the Bear Clan. I'm currently doing a lot of transitioning back and forth from here to the city as just a part of a lot of my work and roles. You know, as a dancer, speaking in webinars, as well as trying to put a business together, Mi'Kmaw's Creations, as well as going back to school. And there's not really much more that I could say other than, you know, the gratitude and the appreciation of just being able to come back to the land. And being able to be in this time of seeing everyone come together. And the best part, I guess, about coming together is it's we're protecting the land, but we're also reclaiming our territory. And for many of us, we've been disconnected from that space for a very long time. And for a lot of us, have never even had the opportunity to visit these places. So we've also just recently made another checkpoint on the back point of our community, covering the Zec Pontiac at the old Black Rollway sections. So that's also been a huge story in itself, with just what's been happening down there. But I just can't express how much of the reconnection we're also building with the land. And also seeing that our work is actually happening, because at this checkpoint in our community, there's one of the guys down there had posted a video of a moose that was that had just walked right near the checkpoint. And we haven't really had moose back there in, I don't know, ever. We'll have one odd enough in a year, but that's, I think, the second or the third one that's been spotted this year. So it's pretty cool to see that that what we're doing is working. However, not only are we, dealing with all of this pride and, this strength in coming back to the land, but it's also opening a lot of other doors to racism and just people, or the non-Indigenous people, the hunters, a platform, just a space for them to be racist. So there's been a lot of that happening, and a lot of pressures as to what kind of battles we are choosing. So for myself, just being all around from camp to camp and going from the city back and forth, I've actually just taken some time for myself for self-care these last couple days, to just rest and reflect on just what's been happening, because it's hard out there. And I just want to say thank you for having this opportunity to speak and give a little bit of insight of what we're doing, and that not only what we're doing is hard, but it's also working. And I thought that it would be cool to let you guys know just about the moose that are coming back into our community of Kitigan CB as well. So that's all I'll say for now. And that's it. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Mariah. So with this moose moratorium, there's many things that, there's a history as to why this is happening. And I'm going to call upon an elder of the community to kind of fill in on the historical parts, if you don't mind, and how we got to this point. Because basically Algonquin, as all First Nations people, we're looking at towards the next 7 generations. And I'm hoping that Claudette Commanda would be able to help us fill in the history part. Claudette?
Well, thank you, my dynamic duo partner. Thank you, Michelle. Wasn't expecting this, but thank you. Um, Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate that. I want to begin by acknowledging my grandson Ryder for the beautiful opening that he blessed us with. So Chimigwej Ryder, Chiminotagum, Miigwej. And I also want to acknowledge Mariah for sharing her words with us as well. So thank you for everyone for being here, truly appreciate it. And I am sitting here on the homeland of the Algonquin people. So to each and every one of you, I will again say as what has been said is welcome to this beautiful unsurrendered homeland of the Algonquin people. The homeland that the Creator entrusted onto us since time immemorial, and the homeland that we must ensure will be here forevermore. And we have that responsibility to ensure that our land is here and all those beautiful natural resources that the Creator blessed us with since time immemorial, that these lands and everything that is created on these lands and live on these lands will continue to be here for the next 7 generations and beyond. As Ryder had indicated earlier, the responsibility that we have as a people is to ensure that Mother Earth is protected, to ensure that all our living entities that she blesses us with will be here today and tomorrow, because we have that responsibility in the same way that our ancestors had a responsibility for us. And 7 generations ago, our ancestors, they worked hard, they prayed hard, and they followed those instructions that the Creator had blessed our people with to ensure that we today, the 7th generation, are here. So when I look at these young people such as Ryder, he is living that responsibility as what our ancestors of long ago, since time immemorial, what they did. And so here he is today, and he will ensure that the 7 generations who are not here yet, they will remember this because they are listening. It is said in our teachings and our spiritual beliefs in our creation story that the 7 generations physically are not here, but they're not here, but they hear us and they hear our words. And to provide the history with respect to this, the Moose Monatorium, well, I will share what I know, and that a few years ago, it became very clear to our elders, and especially to those Algonquin people that live on the land and live with the land. And Ryder's people, that is how he was raised. He was raised with the land, on the land. And they came forward and said, we need to do something to protect the animals, to protect the moose, because moose hunting became a sport hunting game or pastime that the non-Indigenous world truly relished in that. But our people said we have a responsibility to protect the moose, because the moose from the beginning of time has been one of the main staples of the Algonquin people. We were blessed with the sustenance that Mother Earth provides for us. And the moose, our relative who gives his life for us to sustain, we must ensure that he and she is protected. So years ago, our people came forward with that and brought it to from community to community. Then they brought it to our leaders and to our leaders to get involved and then raise this awareness to government, and in particular to raise it to the Quebec government and to these outfitters. But unfortunately, it has fallen on deaf ears, and then our people realize that the government is not going to do anything to support us. How can government be the solution when in fact it is the problem? And especially when we're looking at Quebec, because you're all aware that the Premier of Quebec has made it very clear that there is no racism in Quebec, in particular no systemic racism. Well, we know there is, in light of what's occurred in the past week or so, right? So here we are now, our people last year and again this year, not just Kitigan-Zibi, but Warrior Lake, and as well as the other Algonquin communities got together and said, okay, we're protecting. This is our land, and we have the right to be on our land, and we are going to exercise that right, our inherent right. We also have those constitutional rights. We also have those treaty rights. Algonquin people are not treaty people, but we do have peace and friendship treaties that are just as valuable as the Confederation, pre-Confederation treaties, and as well as the number treaties. The Supreme Court of Canada has valued that and has reaffirmed that the peace and friendship treaties, or all treaties, are very sacred, and this is our inherent rights flow from those particular treaties as well, constitutionally. And this is our position that we've made, that constitutionally our rights need to be protected, and we need to hold Canada accountable to their own law, but we always begin on that foundation and that premise of our inherent right, because our laws, who we are as Anishinaabe, flow from our teachings, our creation stories, and found in our languages. So the practice of our culture, that is our law. The exercise of our rights, that is our law. And the responsibility that we have to oneself and family and nation and community today, and for the 7th generation of responsibility, that is our law. And we need to ensure that. And it pleased my heart to see these young people, especially these young people. We see them from as young as 15 years old to right up until like in their early 20s. And they're rising and they're saying, you know, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Because they really feel that connection to who they are, to the land, that connection to their relatives, those animals. And one of the first laws that we were taught as children was that law of nature, respect the animals. And this is what we must continue to do. So fast forward, here we are today, Algonquin people. We have reclaimed and maintained our right to our territories. And we will continue holding firm and strong. And we've made the government aware that if they don't change, we're not going anywhere. And we'll be back next year, and we'll be back stronger and unity. And it pleases my heart to see all our various nations coming forward and supporting us. It pleases my heart to see the Algonquin Nation coming together. It pleases my heart to see all those nations of Turtle Island coming together. And as the Algonquin people are standing for the right to protect the moose and to protect our land, we also stand in solidarity with our Mi'Kmaw brothers and sisters to their right to fishing. And we also stand in solidarity with all our brothers and sisters across Turtle Island. And every one of our nations are facing something each and every day. Very sad. It shouldn't be that way, but our prayers, our ancestors will keep us strong. And indeed, I end with these words as what my grandfather, the late William Commanda, always said. He had a vision in the 1960s, and that was the gathering of nations. And he brought the gathering of nations together, the gathering of North American Indian nations. He brought them together at his homestead in Kitagan ZB. And here we are today, and I'm proud to see my grandson, 19 years old, standing up and strong for the rights of his people, and my other grandchildren too as well. And here he is. And my grandfather was so right when he said, you will see your grandchildren. You will see your grandchildren standing. You will see your grandchildren will be part of bringing back the gathering of nations. So I say Chimigwedge to my grandfather for this beauty and vision and love that he had for all of us. And so to all of you, thank you. And Michelle, thank you for giving me this time to speak. Again, I totally was not expecting it. So thank you, and keep up the good work, you young people. Keep up the good work. And to all of the supporters that are out there, thank you for listening. Open your minds, open your hearts, open your eyes, open your spirit, and let's come together. And together, we will make good change for the survival of those beautiful natural elements that the Creator blessed us with, and for the survival as who we are as a people today and tomorrow, the children. Chimigwedge, thank you.
Miigwech, Claudette. And if you want to know about the law, ask Claudette. She is a lawyer. All right. So we're going to go into a quick, if anybody has any questions, I will be posting Emily Sigwin's email as soon as I receive it or find it. For the next part will be for the Mi'Kmaw Nation and their issues. But right now, I'd like to take a couple of questions. And if anybody has any, could you please feel free to, I would say raise a hand, but I'm just hoping that you're able to ask straight out.
Questions?
Did anybody have a question? They're more than welcome.
It's always a hard forum to ask questions in a Zoom. You know from your online classes how much fun that is. Oh, is this too much like an online class? I'm sorry about that. Is it better than an online class? You know, just because we're, you get to see video of actual real people. Is that okay? Because I can shut it down and we can do something interactive. I just thought this is such a great option.
So I'm wondering if, because the sound is a bit odd, Jane, if maybe questions could be put into the chat and then asked. And I think, Michelle, we were actually going to do both presentations and then do questions at the end.
Yeah.
So maybe. And
I was just asking in case there's immediate questions.
Okay.
All right, so we'll head over to Ishbel, and Ishbel, you can introduce your crew.
Okay. So I would first like to acknowledge being in Mi'kmaw territory and the unceded territory of Mi'kmawgi. And for those that don't know the meaning of the word unceded, it means that this land belongs to the Mi'kmaw. This land was never given up. There was no treaty saying we will give up this land and you get this. It is unceded territory, meaning that all this territory, which includes what is now called New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, part of the Gas Bay, and it even went down into the Wabanaki Confederacy, went down into Maine. And so we honor the ancestors who were amazingly wise in the treaties that were formed and by not giving up the land, and give thanks for the ancestors and give thanks to be in this beautiful, beautiful territory. And so a lot of you have heard about the lobster struggles that have been going on here, the fishing struggles that have been going on here. And we have 3 excellent speakers to talk about that. And I'm going to pass it over to them. And first up is Cheryl Maloney, who is a very strong Mi'kmaw woman who's been fighting for treaty rights and fighting for people to have a voice, promoting being stewards of their territory, promoting the matricultural system of the Mi'kmaw and the returning of the clan mothers, which is another whole area of work, and promoting nation-to-nation modeling. She's an amazing woman in terms of having started all kinds of different organizations, as the Jane Paul Center for Aboriginal Women and Girls, the Eastern Door Indigenous Women's Association, and was president of the Nova Scotia Native Women's Association, has represented the Mi'kmaw at the UN, and just has done an amazing amount of work. And so with that, I'd like to pass it over to Cheryl. Oh, turn your mic on.
On. There we go.
Yes, thank you.
Can you all hear me now? Okay. Wow, it was nice to be in this forum, and I've seen Dr. Jane and Claudette. Nice to see you, ladies. Some of my mentors and go-to partners in crimes at times. I'd also like to comment on the youth. And I know we have Mary Lee coming. She's a mom. but I find it really powerful that the things that I've been saying and the things my dad has been saying, the things that our grandparents are saying, I can hear it in our youth. And I've heard it here today in the this webinar, but I heard it down in Saulnierville on the wharf. And I thought, I don't need to do any more. I can just stay home. And I'm trying to stay home a little more. But I just feel so much hope and pride that those voices of the ancestors are what you guys are, what we're hearing in our youth. And I have no doubt that our ancestors are directly with our youth and directing them and helping them and their actions and their words and the impact they're going to have on our communities and societies. So that gives me peace. And it shows us where we fit in this long line of continuity and resistance to colonization. I was on a break for about 2 years. And then about 7 months ago, I had a vision. And while I was on my break for 2 years, I thought I'm going to cook for my teenagers, 14, 15, 16. I actually cooked for him foods. And I don't know, I'm going to put my timer on. Oh, I stole a couple of minutes. I thought, this is where Creator wants me now. I'm having a break. It's good. I'll know when it's time to go. So then one morning I had a vision. I was awake and laying in bed, and I seen my frying pan, and I was going to reach for the frying pan, and my hand crumbled. Not my hand, the frying pan handle crumbled. And I thought, wow. My partner said, what does that mean? I said, that means I'm going to be working outside the home again. And within a week, I had 2 jobs, and I hadn't stopped till now. And it didn't feel like work. I was working and behind the scenes for Sipeknekatik, our community, building a strong constitutional protocol, built in free, prior, informed consent within our nation. Then the next step was to build in our fisheries path forward in fisheries. And I felt guided every step of the way. And often I just feel like the ancestors just use me and, use and abuse. And what do you want us to do now? And sometimes they wanted us to shut down highways, and sometimes we've done that. But I've always felt guided and directed by the ancestors. And my ancestors are the direct signatories to the treaty. And Jean-Baptiste Cope is probably my 8th great-grandfather. But what we're seeing down in Mi'Kmaq now is a self-governing model of a community that's put forth a really strong self-governing model based in rights and the treaty. This community was a community that always resisted. And I know Sherry and Mary Lee come from long families of resisting. So we share that. The Mi'Kmaq are quite strong in that area. But the young people are the ones that are now guided down there. They're fishing down there. They're doing ceremony. They're doing the webinars. And it's scary because it's dangerous down there. What's happening on the water is dangerous. And we are up against the world, but I doubt that anybody realizes the strength with our people and the strength in our rights. And one of the things I've been talking about across the country, any media or anybody is, if you want to talk to me, an interview or anything, I give them a couple films I tell them to watch. And their titles, if they say one more time, out of season, unregulated, illegal fishery, I'm tired. The Mi'Kmaq have a regulated fishery. We have our own enforcement. We have our own governance model that requires free, prior, informed consent. So the time of DFO coming in and pushing their agenda on our rights can't happen in my community anymore without it going to the members. Our governance model is strong. My concern is that some of the other communities that are getting involved too soon without doing the governance piece with their communities is it's going to be tricky, and they're all trying to go out within a couple of weeks. So I think one of my messaging now and messaging to anybody that will listen to me is that you have to build up your governance no matter what, whether we're protecting the moose or whether we're asserting rights. I think it's time for nations to build up those strong governance models, that foundation, and then we take on the assertions, then we take on the crown, then we can, you know, it's amazing. I tell you, it's amazing because my dad, the former chief Cheryl Maloney, when we were fighting 21 years ago on the water, and DFO was ramming our boats and everything, my sister did a film with Matthew Kuncum, and he said, why don't the Coast Guard, why doesn't the RCMP, why don't they come and protect us and exercise in our rights like they did with the segregation, abolishment of segregation in the schools in the United States? I always hear that. So when we're down on the water, the first 2 or 3 days, nobody came. The DFO didn't come, RCMP didn't come, no Army didn't come. Our small $10,000 boats were surrounded by $500,000 boats to $750,000 boats. And there was a lot of them. I think you guys seen the flares being shot at our people, our gear being taken, our food, our sacred food, livelihood treaty traps are taken by these non-native fishermen out of our water, out of our lands, put on their boats. But they didn't realize within days the vision we had, the strength of our rights, the rule of law that we called on would have to finally come and say, well, yes, the Mi'kmaq have rights. They called in the RCMP on the water. They called in the Coast Guard, and they called in the Navy. And now our traps are in the water, and they're being protected in the water as we fish and we conduct our sacred activities that we have always done. This isn't for moderate livelihood. This is our sacred relationship. This is our sustenance as nations of people. And they're protecting it. But the protections don't last once you leave the water. It's illegal to sell our fish in the province of Nova Scotia until the Premier changes the legislation. Just one little section in the Act needs to be changed. We're not protected in the towns. We're not protected in the media. We're not protected on social media. And our kids aren't protected in the schools, the streets, the towns, and cities in Nova Scotia. But you know, we came a long ways where at least our treaties are protected, the sacred connection and the consistency. Our young people, they're protected by the ancestors. They carry out the work. The young men fishing, and the young women doing the ceremonies, and the young ladies fishing. We have young ladies fishing. We have, you know, I'm so proud of them. You know, media said, send me to a fisherman to tell the story. Well, here's our fisherwomen. Talk to them too. So they are protected, and we are going to win this. We're winning. The prophecies say we're going to win. We're winning. And I just want to close, because I know I started and I didn't have my timer on. I got 2 minutes left. I remember being in Ottawa at Idle No More, and I was doing a national radio interview, and can't remember. And they said, Cheryl, it was January 10th when they were all smoozing with the Prime Minister. Said, do you think Idle No More is over? And I said, no, it can never be over. Those young people across the country that went to the internet and learned what omnibus legislation was about, learned about their treaties, their ceremonies, the Constitution, the honor of the crown, those young people across this country, and it was like the 7th generation uprising. You can't take that back. 10 years ago, they left there and they went to the universities and they took their sacred knowledge and their sacred identity as the Indigenous peoples, and they learned. And those are the people that we see now. I know I'm going to turn into the elder stage soon, but we're good right now. And I think that's one of the big messages that I got, coming out of the last few weeks of this round of assertions. We're so strong, the law is on our side, and our youth are powerful. So with that, I just want to thank you for allowing me to be in the forum with the youth, because I really do want to acknowledge Mariah and Ryder, for doing what you guys are doing and carry on that sacred knowledge, and know that you guys are protected. That protection is with you. I think Indigenous people in this country are in good hands. I don't think they can take back what we're getting now. Like, we're pushing the envelope on rights and stewardship across this Turtle Island. They can't take back what we're taking back. It's too late for them. That's it for me, folks. Thank you, guys. Love it. Love everybody in here. I'm scrolling through and seeing everybody that's here, and I'm like, oh, hi. And acknowledge you all. And there's my timer. My timer just went.
Thank you, Cheryl. Much appreciated. Much appreciated sharing those messages, and especially about the ancestors being with the youth and the rise up of the 7th generation. I'm going to pass it now to Marilyn Lee, who is an amazing young Mi'kmaw woman who, to me, each day lives her inherent right, believes strongly in sovereignty, and reminds me somewhat of Mila from the Yukon, who takes people out onto the land and goes on 3-week canoe trips, because she keeps saying, if we're not on the land, we lose our sovereignty over it, and we need those connections. Marilyn Lee has been fishing lobster for 22 years in a small boat without having support from many other people, and is very passionate about this issue. So with this, I'll pass it over to you, Marilyn Lee.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Lee. My spirit name is Gahimidgownik, which means standing otter. This is my daughter. This is Evelyn. Her name is Glogowedjik Dukwedjiet, which means she who comes from the stars. I guess everything that I've been doing for the last 22 years was for her. When I first started lobster fishing, I was 14. I was probably 15 when I started running into the hatred and the racism that comes from non-native fisher people, from shotguns to death threats to damaged property to people creeping into our land while we slept. So we're pretty familiar with their tactics, so I'm not really surprised. I think it's important that we maximize our rights as individuals. I have a hard time with words like agreements. I have hard times with words like moderate livelihood, only because that's not really who we are. And if we start making these agreements and we start trying to change what we have set in stone, I think that's going to allow the government into our lives even more than they already are, especially in the future when my daughter gets to be of an age. I want her to be able to fish, and I want her to be able to hunt. Her dad is Algonquin, so she's Mi'kmaw and Algonquin. She's going to be spending time in the bush up in Algonquin Park like we do. We're going to teach her how to live off the land. I never realized the importance of land until my partner, who is from Pembroke, started taking me out into the bush. And I think the longest we've done, was like 122 days or something like that. And I never realized the strength and the endurance that it took as a I like saying Ilnu because it's the people, we're the people. You don't realize the strength you have that comes from the inside. And when I first started inherent right lobster fishing 5 years ago, I was met with such hatred that I almost gave up a few times. But the importance of who we are and what we do come from the water. It comes from the land. I want to give a huge thanks to all our water walkers and to all our water defenders, because water is life. And as funny as I think that is when my sister Malian says it, it's the absolute truth. Water is life. And I never realized the importance of that water until I had a daughter, until I had my own child. And everything that I fight for is for her. It has nothing to do with me. I want her grandchildren and great-grandchildren to be able to go out and assert her right, but I don't want it to be a battle for her. I don't want it to be a fight. I think the hardest part when I started my fight for the inherent right, I was with my nephews and they were teenagers at the time. So it was one woman, 2 teenagers, a 19-foot boat, and we were taking on DFO, and we were taking on Europeans, and we were taking on so many people, and we were being denied access. We were being denied help. We had to send my European friends to get us bait. We had to send my European friends to like get us supplies and things that we needed to fish. And that's not right, and that's not fair. And I think if we start agreeing to these agreements without actually fighting for what is entitled to us, which is the land. And if we want to be technical, the only governance of land that the government should have is reserve land. And I think people need to take into account that we signed that land back to the government. So the only jurisdiction they have technically is that spot. Outside of reserve land, that's all unceded territory. They have no jurisdiction there. Nobody has the right to talk and to defend and negotiate my right, just as I never had the right to negotiate anybody else's right. My daughter, I don't speak in any way that could probably diminish what little she has left right now, because I think we have enough lawyers and enough leaders in positions that's not being 100% honest, because I'm not somebody who can go out on a 30-foot boat. I'm not somebody who's down for that. I think when people talk about inherent right, I think they confuse that with other things, because as Indigenous people, we never took, I like what Ryder said, we never took more than we needed. We always gave back. We always gave respect. I do ceremony each and every single time I get on the water, because that's what you do. I think we lose focus and we lose sight of what's important, because we're trying and we're worried and we're scared that we're going to lose what little we already have. So we're quick to take what little they try to give us. And the Europeans are so comfortable for the last 529 years that the Ilnu people of this land didn't have anything, that the thought of us even having the small fraction of something is too much. They talk conservations, they talk numbers, they talk all these things. If you want to fish like your ancestors did, do this, do that. A white man told me that. I took the hauler off my boat. I was pregnant with my daughter and I was pulling my traps by hand, just because I didn't want anybody to say that I took anything from the white man. So it can be done, you know? Just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean that we should. And when I hear my brothers and sisters talking about the moose, I feel the same way for our animals here. I feel the same way for our lobsters as you do for your moose. And I know that probably sounds crazy, but after spending time in your territory and living off the land, the moose taught me a lot. And one of the biggest things that they taught me, I think, was bravery, because we had a standoff with the moose, and he was a young moose, and he would not move off that track. And he looked at us and we looked at him. None of us budged. Finally, we just kind of like backed away from each other. And it was in that moment that I realized, when people talk of disconnect, the only disconnect that we're struggling with right now is the fact that we're not allowed to go back to what we know, and that is our land. And I think it's important for our young people to see us assert these rights. It's one thing to talk about them. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing completely to live it. And we need to start bringing our children out of these facilities. We need to stop bringing them out of the hotels. We need to stop bringing them into all these buildings and start actually taking them to the places that we say we need to protect. And when I think of our rights, I think of nation to nation building. That's what everybody seems to throw around. And I'm going to need Ishbel to tell me when I'm talking too much, because I tend to do that. But there's no such thing as nation to nation right now. Justin Trudeau, he throws that statement around a lot, nation to nation. Nation to nation, when you think of a nation is somebody who can take care of themselves, who are self-sufficient, and who can govern their own body without the help of anybody else. As it stands right now, we are taking every direction from the federal government. So how is that fair in terms of nation to nation building? In terms of, what's that word that they like? When they make everything right. Do you know what I mean?
Reconciliation?
Reconciliation.
Yes, that word. I'm not a fan of that word. Because the only time they want to reconcile with us is if we're agreeing to what they're telling us we have to agree to. How is that fair? When I think of my daughter, I don't want anybody to look at her and say, hey, you know what? You don't have any rights. Your leaders before you got rid of them. Inherent means that was passed to me through my parents, through my bloodline, through my creator. The government did not give it to me. The people who are defending these new age agreements did not give that to me. My chief and council did not give that to me. My blood did. People have asked me to make agreements with DFO. People have asked me to sit down and try to discuss how we can make things better between the First Nations people and the non-Native people. They always want us to bend for them. After 529 years, I think it's time that we actually stop. We stop bending. We start standing strong like we have been, and we start resisting back more than we have been. Because I always like that saying, and it's like, if you have somebody trying to break into your house and their foot is in the door, how long can you hold that door shut while your children are crying and your children are hungry before you have to leave that door to tend to your family? And then that intruder comes into your home, takes what they want, and leaves the rest. That's what we're doing. And we're settling, like I remember seeing the Algonquin people doing their land claims. The government wanted to give the Algonquin people, what, 1%? And that's like what they're trying to do to us right now. And we're taking it because we're so used to having nothing. I fight my fight, and I've done so by myself, aside from my family, my mom, my siblings, my nephew. Aside from them, I stood there by myself. I stood in DFO by myself. I stood up to the white man by myself. So when people say and they talk of unity, we really need to sit down and reevaluate what that means. Because we can't be united when it's beneficial for us and we can do with it what's going to make us work. We have to be united all the time. And I feel between the Algonquins, between the Cree, between Squamish, between Mi'Kmaw, between all these people, the problem the government had with me was they said that I thought too forward. And when I said that, and when they told me that, it was because I wanted to use all our resources across Turtle Island, across Ilnawagadi, amongst Indigenous people. Because if Indigenous people take back control of that barter and that trade, then the Europeans and Canadian government are going to have to come to us. But we have to be on the same page. We have to stop trying to use Western society and their federal ways. Those don't work. We shouldn't be asking for a seat at their table. They should be begging for a seat at ours. And I'm tired. I don't want to explain to my child one day that we sold her out. And that's what we're doing. There is a hereditary chief in British Columbia, Joe Mathias, and he said, if you go to a battle to fight and your people aren't standing behind you, you might as well lay down and die. And that's exactly what we're doing. And it's our own people who's doing it to us. And we need to figure out, and we need to try to work together right across the entire board. Even if we have to exclude the non-natives and just start networking between us. We need to become sovereign And we need to do it now. And that's just how I feel. We're asking for a piece of a pie when we have the means to bake pies for every man, woman, and child across the board for the rest of their life. And I can't settle for anything less. And if they want me off the water, they're gonna have to take me off the water, because I refuse to bend for somebody who's trying to kill me and my offspring, because that's what they're doing. And we need to resist that at all costs. And that's all.
Thank you. Thank you so
Evelyn seconds it.
Yay!
She was out on the boat with me. I was 7 months pregnant, out fishing. I was doing my thing. And now here we are. But we need to remind our young people that they're gifts from Creator. And they deserve more than what we're leaving them. They deserve more than scraps.
Thank you.
I don't know if I got too deadly. I apologize.
No, there's no reason to apologize, because you're speaking your truth and talking about inherent rights, and that's what needs to be communicated, I think. It's what folks need to understand, just like you said, you know, so there's nothing to apologize. It was awesome. And
thank you.
Much appreciated. You're not only sharing your words, but you're continuing to live sovereignty, and that is so important for the future generations. So truly appreciate it and truly honor you, Marilyn Lee. You gave me goosebumps, girl.
I give
got
myself
me teary-eyed.
I got a little teary-eyed too, I can't lie. But it's my heart. I love my people with everything I have. And if I'm going and I'm rising, I want everybody to be rising. It's not fair if it's just me and I leave all my people behind. That's not a leader. That's not somebody you can be proud of. Right? So that's it again.
Malalan. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sherry Pictou, who is a longtime activist. She was also co-chair of the World Fisheries Forum, which is an organization for small boat fisheries around the world. She's traveled to the West Coast to talk to folks about the salmon wars that have happened up there. She's also a professor at Dalhousie University and has long been a supporter of Indigenous women and food sovereignty. Her band did not sign agreements when it came down, Bear River First Nations, where the water cuts high, and has been on the front lines for a long time, but like many of us who are getting older, starts to take a bit of a different role than being out on the front lines. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Sherry.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I must say I'm a little bit overwhelmed here. I don't even know I could speak. And I didn't know who was speaking. And then I seen this list and I seen Cheryl and Marilyn there. And I thought, okay, well, what can I say? And honest to God, like, what can I say after that? Yeah, I want to thank you all and the previous speakers. My emotions just all over, because we've had quite the struggle here as well with moose. We had to fight for our moose hunting rights and to hang on to those rights in the 1980s. They tried to put us into a lottery system, and we resisted against that. So I don't know what I can add. I'll just try to speak from my heart. And I got a few notes here as well. And Ishbel's right, and Ishbel underestimates herself too, because I know our paths crossed back in the year 1999 from there on. And when Donald Marshall Jr. was first arrested and the years that he fought in that court system to have our treaty rights recognized. And, you know, the last few weeks has been a little bit of almost like PTSD for me, because I remember when this had first happened and the big first round of the backlash was by government, by DFO. DFO was slinging their guns around more so than the RCMP, and me having to haul off our people, as I know Marilyn knows a few people in our community. I had to haul them off the water, and they were so angry to, you know, having to come off the water. But I had to kind of explain to them, because some of them were young, and saying, we kind of need you. We have a small community. And so there's been a lot of processing, because basically, you know, 21 years later, we're seeing, as Cheryl had explained, this high degree of racism. And, you know, and I know Ishbel, with her work and my work, we've done a lot of cross-cultural work with fishermen too, but this is a new generation, and boy, oh boy, it's our reality. But I want to speak a little bit about that. You know, in regards to inherent and treaty rights, the process is like Marilyn has been saying, is that you know, it's only it's one thing to win these rights in the court system, and it's quite another in how they're interpreted and how they're implemented. And that's where we seem to lose the spirit and intent of our treaties, particularly. And just as way back in 1999, 2000, and I remember Cheryl's dad was the only one who kind of took up for us when everybody started signing these agreements. It was quite clear to us that, oh, they're going to assimilate us into the current fishery regime. And that's the problem I find. And you know, and even, you know, looking at some of the racist remarks and the behavior and so forth, it seems to me when we want to practice our treaty and Indigenous rights from an Indigenous perspective or a Mi'kmaq perspective, that Canadians come back, or they somehow feel threatened because their rights are they feel they're being threatened. And they come up with this notion of equality, which drives me just bonkers. And it's so, okay, we're going to make you equal to, we're going to make you equal to us. And that's where this interpretation starts to go awry. All of a sudden, it's a Canadian or a settler-based line to which all of a sudden we have to confine our treaty and inherent rights. And that becomes so problematic in a number of ways. And I always try to ask the question, why do we want to become equal in a society that causes the inequity to begin with? And I have such difficult time with the social economic gap, because you take a look at Canadian society, and those gaps are large and few, are very large. And so, you know, what this actually is saying is, like, by Canadians, and particularly by the state, the government, we will now make you, the Indigenous people, equal to us. And basically that liberal notion of equality is going to just perpetuate the inequalities that we've been struggling against for generations. And yeah, so we have this long history. You know, I want to give respect to all of those resistant fighters that came long before us throughout the generations. I can remember my grandmother's talk, and you can go back into 1800s stories about, you know, trying to avoid the fish wardens and so forth, but this long struggle. And I don't know how to say this. I'm just trying to just figure out how to say this. Yeah, I want to pay respect to them. And so we've had this long struggle, and now that we have these, our inherent rights and our treaty rights coming to the surface, Marilyn's right. It's all of a sudden, it's like, let's try to get in there, and we got to reconcile this to Canadian law. And what that does is preempt us as a people of bringing forth our own worldviews. I was very, very fortunate in the last couple of weeks when I've been feeling so low, just by chance of getting on to a few phone calls where there have been elders. And and they just kind of reground me. And just like tonight, this is sort of a regrounding. One of the teachings that Elder Albert Marshall reminded me of not too long ago, and I think Jane McMillan was on that call as well, along with Elder Carrie Prosper, was, we have, with rights comes responsibility, and we have a responsibility to ensure that we do not compromise the integrity of the ecosystems, to ensure that those ecosystems and those sources of our food, our water, are there for generations to come. And, it's such a grounding, teaching that we're never allowed to practice. And that's the point that I want to make, and what Marilyn's talking about. Every time that, we get into these rooms with, how those, to negotiate treaty rights and so forth, they are looked at as merely commodities. And for us, it's so much more. It's food, it's livelihood, it's all of those things. And I don't know when our treaty rights were only commodities, about exploiting the land, about exploiting the resources for commodities. And we're seeing this right across Northern Turtle Island, known today as Canada, and now actually, throughout North America, where more and more women and our allies and our young generation are standing up and saying we have to protect the integrity of our resources. We have to protect that to make sure that it's there for the 7 generations to come. And so we do have to ask ourselves, when we win these rights, what are it's like to make the space? What are those inherent rights? What are those treaty rights for us? What are they from our perspective? And back in 1999, we never had the opportunity to explore that. I remember being at a meeting in Fredericton, and it was a meeting in Fredericton. I want to say it was almost winter, and everybody said, yeah, and there was this beautiful plan. This was from the Mi'Kmaw perspective, talking about, hunting and fishing districts and protocols. Because one of the things that people forget, Donald Marshall Jr. had went to Sipeknekatik and went to the Sipeknekatik chief and said, I want to fish and sell eels here, just out of that protocol, and those were the type of protocols. But anyways, we had a big plan, and I left Fredericton, drove to the St. John ferry, took the ferry home, and by the time I got home, the first individual fishing agreement had been signed. And that was really intentional. So what they did, they went community by community by community. And that was where we kind of lost our unity there for a while. And I want to commend Cheryl. I've been a little bit leery with the behind closed door meetings I've been hearing and so forth. But one of the things that I have heard Cheryl speak up quite strongly is that this has to include our people. This has to include the grassroots people. They have to give their consent. I could tell you stories upon stories about this. And this is what's so problematic. This is with the women that I work with that are fighting System Mine, Alton Gas. They are shocked when they go out to defend their lands and waters, and they do it with ceremony. They're being guided. They do ceremony to do these things and call on their ancestors and so forth. And they're always shocked when they find out that some agreement or some leadership has been behind the closed doors. So I think, you know, just talking off the cuff now, and I don't want to sound repetitive, but one of the things that the youth that I'm learning here tonight is that, you know, no more. No more. You have to include us. But the way those treaty and negotiation tables are set up, it's in corporate interest. Corporate law supersedes human rights law, supersedes, you know, even Indigenous laws. And I think we're seeing a turn now. And I just wanted to, I wanted to end with this. I was going to end with a quote, but I had this beautiful teaching yesterday. Ishmael was on that call too, by Jane Meader, and we got into this discussion about treaty. And one of the things, you know, the concept of treaties did not come to the Mi'kmaq from across the water. Through wampum, we had the Wabanaki Confederacy, we had agreements with other nations, we traded with other nations and so forth. So we know, and it's inherent in our language. And as I've heard our brothers and sisters say, that the elder who spoke earlier, that our treaties are sacred. And Jane and I were talking about how what's often taken for granted about those treaties, it wasn't like someone wrote up something and one day we showed up and signed it. That there was deliberations upon deliberations amongst the Mi'Kmaw Nation, amongst the Wabanaki Confederacy, I will say. And there was deliberations for days about those treaties. And we didn't have the chief and council system that we have today, and they would say, now who would be a good one? Who would be a good one to go and represent us? And they would choose that person. And what Jane reminded me of is that there's the sacredness. You have to remember back in the 1700s, we had our language, and we had this, an inherent in our language and our being is that our how can I say, our agreements are relational. They are respectful between humans and between humans and the non-human world. And that's what moose hunting actually taught me. My aunt taught me this. I seen where they would make offerings. I seen where they would call on the ancestors and loved ones who passed on, including my younger brother and so forth. And poof, there would be a moose. And so, and I thought that was really important. And she said, you know, the English we didn't succumb to the English. They succumbed to us. And you know, she's right. And the reason why that 1752 treaty was signed was because Cornwallis couldn't leave the fort for 3 years. And that was how strong a militant, you know, the Mi'kmaq were. And I just wanted to end on that note. And so when Marilyn says, you know, we shouldn't have to go to any table. They should have to come to our table. And so I think we're, you know, at another turning point. I don't know if any of my contributions made any sense, but I'm really super interested in my work is what are the grassroots people concept of treaty? What are their concept of treaty, as opposed to the court definitions, opposed to the government definitions? And I'll kind of leave it with that.
Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah, thank you.
And like, I think that's so true. And I get so amazed by the treaties and the wampum belts. Even the old wampum belt that has the church in it, which has the door open. And you never see pictures of churches with the door open. And somebody was explaining to me that meant you can go in, but you can go out and you can leave. And that's a wampum belt from the 1600s. And I think, wow, how did they have such wisdom to put that message in there for the future generations? So it is just totally, totally amazing. So at this point, we'd like to open it up for questions, and either Adriana or Lisa are going to read any questions that may come up that people have. I think there was some questions earlier on. One question was, how long is the moose moratorium going to go on for? And Ryder answered at least 5 years. Yeah. And there was another earlier question. Oh, I can't find it now. But if anyone has any questions, you can either post them in the chat or just ask your questions, and we can direct them to whoever wants to answer them. I think Marilyn Lee may have had to go and put her baby to bed. I'm not sure, but I'm not seeing her picture there, so I'm not sure if she's still there or not.
She's still there.
She's still there?
I can't
Okay.
turn my my video on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, her video's off, but she's there.
Okay.
The host shut me off.
Oh, the host shut you off? Oh, maybe I did something which I shouldn't have done. Let me try. Oh, it wasn't me. And I just also just quickly want to say, when Sherry was talking about part of the work we did 20 years ago, and that was a project called On Common Ground, which happened at the time that the Marshall decision came down. And basically, what we ended up doing down in Sherry's territory in that area was kicking out the DFO, kicking out all the government officials, and bringing together the non-native and the native fishermen to do talking circles. And to and we had a number of pieces of work where we brought together Mi'Kmaw and other folks and worked through a lot of these different things. And so any agreements that were made between the people and not the government. And that was a huge difference. And I think I hope that some of the elder Acadian fishermen that we see supporting on the wharf probably remember those times. And when you get old like me, you think you do this work and you think it's done, and then you realize there's another generation that doesn't have a clue about the work that we did to bring the people together. And so it certainly feels like we need to do that work again.
And it wasn't easy.
It was not
we had
easy.
We had the difficult conversations for sure.
And we threw some of those non-native fishermen in a sweat lodge up in Cape Breton, and one of them came out just red like a turtle. I mean, like a lobster, like a cooked lobster. And it was the funniest thing. He loved it. But anyways, that's my weird sense of humor. We laughed for days about that.
So one of the questions is if there is any way to support, could you please put in the chat? I guess support the two events that have been raised, the moose moratorium and the fishing.
So I would just like to add a little bit more information about the moose moratorium. So as of this year, the moose moratorium was basically only considered of the Parc de la Vérendrye. And so this year, Kitigan ZB has decided to also block the ZECs, which are pretty much on the outskirts around the park. And so in doing so, it has also created a lot of issues. And one of the ZECs have recently put out an injunction for the Algonquin Nation. And so the whole reason why we included the ZEC a part of the moratorium, well, our territory is not only limited to the park. And we wanted to expand that, the moratorium across our territory, including the ZEX as well. And with these, along with these reclaiming spaces and occupying land, as I was mentioning about the black rollaway earlier, there's actually a call out for hunters to be showing up there on Thursday when they open up the rifle hunting, to essentially place harm on the people who are defending the land there. So we were calling out for support for anybody who can kind of make their way there this weekend, to just help our people to have more numbers. And so with all of these harms, it basically just comes down to, you know, the lack of education of, you know, on our territories, you know. And again, it's, I really appreciate, you know, what Marilyn had to say. And she really had me crying and stuff. So I cannot agree more from what she had to mention, especially about the whole pieces of being on the reserve. And just, you know, we should have that entitlement and peace to be able to walk freely wherever, whenever. And it's not even about ownership, right? It's about stewardship, and what is it that we're doing to take care of the land. And again, you know, it's these non-Indigenous people who are, you know, trying to work on these reconciliation pieces, but aren't really reconciling anything, you know. And as we've probably seen on the news, CPAC is one of the huge issues of what's going on in the park. And I'll just share a personal story that just happened recently, and how I wanted to go pick blueberries. And I honestly felt so scared. And, you know, I really want to thank Marilyn, you know, for the strength in her words. And, you know, I really wish I had that strength that time when I went pick the blueberries, because when I went, I was so afraid to go by where we are right now at Clova and that whole area, just because of the lack of reclamation of the land that we have as Kitigan Zibi. And I think like that's a huge piece too, is what we're doing as Kitigan Zibi and what we're doing as the youth is, you know, we're coming back to these spaces and, you know, occupying and remembering, you know, where we come from. And, you know, I wanted to be there because, well, I have a shack there, and my shack actually was my dad's shack, who got it from my great uncle William, who is Claudette's grandfather. It just goes to show how small community is and how important, you know, these land spaces are, you know. And also just how even when we put the idea of sacred spaces, you know, sacred spaces are everywhere, and the land means anything and everything to all of us. And, you know, so I really wanted to go back there and, you know, pick berries and, you know, do all that there. And I felt really scared. And I felt really scared because of CPAC, and because of, you know, the number of non-Indigenous people that just go in and out of that road. So what I did was I went close to Rapid Lake because I have family there, and I have really good friends there. So I felt safe and connected, and I know that if something was to happen in the bush, I could easily call someone from Rapid Lake and they would be right there to help me. And the fact that, and plus being a woman in the bush, thinking of these people, there was just so much going through my mind. And it's so crazy that, we have to think about these things, so many things, just on a regular level, and, thinking about that now, I'm sad that I felt that way, and I'm angry that I felt that way, but going through the moratorium now and, actually reclaiming a bigger space or occupying a bigger space, is amazing. The growth that we are doing just on our own as grassroots people, is, I don't even have any words to put anymore. But it's just important. And one thing that I've also been mentioning to a lot of people is just, they've pushed us into a place of being uncomfortable for a very long time, into being into our reserves. And so now, it's just like Marilyn had mentioned, being on the water and having that pride and taking that ownership, and because we're in the bush and on the waters and, with these little boats or, with these small little checkpoints, like, because they see us reclaiming that space, because they don't really know and understand what we're doing and what we're going through, they're feeling uncomfortable. And I cannot agree more than with what Marilyn had to say. And it really makes me sad that I can't be there on the front lines tonight and yesterday and these last couple of days, but I also know that self-care is important. And I also know that as much as doing the frontline work physically is important, these webinars and doing this work here in the city and engaging here with, these other folks is just as important as well. And even just taking the time to, share. So just like what you all are doing, taking this time right now to listen to what we're going through and sharing this information and, doing the best that you can, from where you are. So Kachimigwech, I myself too like to talk. And, again, right, as Anishinaabeg people, we're all connected in some way or some form. And, even through Zoom and stuff, like, I'm sure we've already said it or we've heard it one time or another, just how things have turned virtually now and how the energies are different. But once we create those spaces to have conversations and to have, these things happen, we feel the energies, and the more that we continue to do that, we're stronger together. So Kachimigwech, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So there's another question on here, Ishmael. Should it be a negotiation today, or what approach would you use to push forward? I guess that's the general. Whoever wants to answer, you can direct.
Okay.
What approach should you use to push forward?
Can I just, I was trying to get out of here, but you intrigued me. I know me too. I'm like, I'll take that one. I'm exhausted, and I know I have a big thing tomorrow, but I just wanted to answer that. I think, we heard just talking about sacred spaces and so forth. I think Cheryl's right in the sense that we're on the right path, but we need to take the time to decide for ourselves what we want to, how we want to approach this. And I think the problem has been is that there's too many agreements, too many frameworks, too many of this coming the top down. And it's only by creating spaces like this that we learn, and through our ancestors and through ceremonies, or who we are as a people, and that will give us the direction. Until we can get that, then I don't think no one can stop us, because it's intergenerational. It's really intergenerational. And and if people are wondering about my background, my beautiful background, that was from a couple of years ago, getting ready for our Harvesters Feast. It's coming up again. It's going to be a shorter version than what we've had in the past, but that was just prior to that starting, where we honor all the harvesters in the community. But anyways, thank you. I just wanted to say that if taking the time to decide who we are, because we've had 20 some odd years of being dictated to, and we're still trying to assert our treaty rights from the way that we've been taught and the way that we learn.
I think too.
Okay, I'll jump in after you.
We need to get consensus from the people. We need to talk to the people. Nobody's talking to the people. They're only talking to the people of a sound mind similar to theirs.
Yeah.
So when people are making these agreements, they're not talking to me. I haven't talked to anybody. And I've been doing this since before everything's happening now. And it's hard because I feel like our communities are pitted against one another.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wants to be that one community that like saves everybody. And that's just not realistic. Because if you look at all our people across the board, we're all like one body. And if our hand's broken, our body has to work extra hard to make up for whatever that hand can't do. And right now, I feel nobody's talking to the people. And I mean truly talking to the people. And if you're going to make an agreement, or you're going to try to dictate something to do with my life, you can at least have the common courtesy to come to my door and ask me what I want. And nobody's doing that. And I feel like with all these new age agreements, that's just going to cause more turmoil between the communities that we currently have right now. None of us are on the same page. None of us are working together. We're not working alongside each other. There's a lot of nepotism. There's a lot of hatred. There's a lot of unresolved issues from 30 years ago that have no business being any part of any kind of agreement, right? Everybody's like, I feel everybody's worried about what we can get right now, that they're losing focus for the future, right? So I really think we need to talk to the people, and not just people who fish, everybody. I take a lot of my direction from the Wabanaki Confederacy. I take a lot of direction from my elders. I take a lot of direction from my people. I don't do nothing until I speak to them first, right? And I think if we want to come up with something, we could at least talk to all of them, not just a handful.
Okay.
I'm going to jump in, but that baby in the rocking just makes me want to just hug the baby, and I feel like I'm hugging the baby.
I know.
So I'm like, oh, thank you so much for that. In regards to negotiation and agreements, the Mi'kmaw people from 21 years ago, when there was an issue and a reason for the minister to be justified to come in and come up with agreements, or when she was justified because it may have been a conservation issue, the law in the last 20 years we've won case after case after case. She doesn't have an automatic power to negotiate with us any longer. Her powers are only triggered if we don't regulate it properly, if we're not sustainable, and if there's a public interest. So the conservation is not an issue for this species in particular. So I think it's a great species for the Mi'kmaw to introduce their regulated plans to. But like Marilee said, everyone's not at the same place. Indian Brook had tags for 2 years, and built a consultation governance protocol, other communities are now ordering them, and they have 2 weeks to get their affairs together. And one of the things I said is, first foundation is include the people. Include the people, give them that free prior informed consent to agree or disagree and to input into it. So we're all at different stages, but there is no real need for the minister to come in any longer and negotiate unless they want to bribe us to fall within their lines. So if we can get our shit together, I hate to say it that way, but I've been saying it for quite a while, we got to build our nations beyond the Indian Act. Then,
we got to hold our leadership accountable. We got to hold the people accountable. Nobody's accountable right now. Everybody's pushing all the issues off on other people. And whenever you try to talk to anybody, it's like, oh, well, I'm only one person, right? I respect everything that's happening right now. I just don't feel good in my heart about it, because I feel like on some level we're selling out. We're taking because they're offering it, and our leadership right across the board, nobody's standing up and saying, no, government, we're not going to do that, right? Because if all 13...
I think our fisher people, I think our rights holders, Mary Lee, I think our rights holders are standing up.
I'm not, I understand that, Cheryl, but now we need our leaders. We need the people who have sworn to protect us, who have sworn to fight for treaty, truly fight for treaty, because I see a lot of people on campaign trails who promise to fight for treaty, who fight for inherent right. And then I talk to council members and I ask them what should happen to somebody who fishes under their inherent right. My council member told me I should go to jail. So when we say we have leadership fighting on our behalf, we don't.
Yeah, I do in my community, so I'm going
to get in there just for a minute. Ishmael, there's a lady called Maria Antelo who has had her hand up and been waiting patiently to say something. There you go. Can she use her voice, please?
Hi there, everybody. Thanks for this amazing opportunity that some of us here as settlers to Canada, we have this opportunity to listen with a whole heart with all these amazing women. And more than a question, I just had a comment that it's also upon us settlers to Canada to do our work here and to do what we can in the places where we are. I live in Hamilton, really close to Six Nations, and you know what's happening right now in Six Nations. So I feel like there's almost a rumbling of the earth right now. There's a rumbling, and we need to listen to that. And what I want to say is just thank you, Chimiigwech, so much, because I'm learning with you. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say some of the last discussion we've had, to me, I think Sherry hit it in the comments, sort of internalized colonialism. And a lot of it is the impacts of colonialism. If we look at the history, we know that the government learned the divide and conquer technique, went into every First Nations community, looked at the family structures, picked two strong families, gave stuff to one family, didn't give to the other family, which set up this history so that families going through the future generations were against these other families without really knowing why. And the whole way that colonialism works is through divide and conquer. So when people are talking about everyone needing to get together, that is so true. And folks who are settlers also need to recognize the impacts of colonialization on them and the worldview that they had prior to being colonialized themselves. And so I think that's part of the piece of work that people have to do, is looking at that and how that it was around disconnecting from land, disconnecting from other people, and that's where the strength comes from. And if we can build that unity amongst the Ilnu and also with allies, and people who have their hearts wide open and want to have a relationship with the earth and with Creator, then that's the way forward. Just as we're always reminded by our elders of every time that we gather to, you know, offer prayer and ask for the ancestors to enter in with us and to guide us and to guide our way forward. And so I think a lot of important things have been said today, and really, truly, truly appreciate everyone speaking here. And someone has just said there's a video documentary about the Algonquin unceded, unsurrendered territory, the Invisible Nation, on the National Film Board, available in both French and English, and to check it out. I'd like to ask if people are okay with that, as we're coming up to the closing time, to actually ask Mi'Kmaw to offer a prayer for all of us and for all of our struggles and for our hearts, because I know I've been very deeply touched and very sorry for hearing about people being afraid to go and pick blueberries. That hurts my heart. And I look at the missing and murdered Indigenous women and I get it. So I think that it's a good thing to offer our prayers for protection for all of us as we go forward in these struggles, and just to give our appreciation. So Mig, if you're still here, is Mi'Kmaw still here?
Ish, I don't. Ish.
Yep, I'm still here, but Michelle, go ahead.
After you're done your prayer, I really would love for Mariah Mi'Kmaw to be able to sing a song to, well, in honor of a beautiful, strong warrior in the...
Are you gonna sing it with me?
2 microphones, you know how it is.
Well, I don't really know that song by heart.
Okay, we'll see what we can do.
Okay, we'll have Mi'Kmaw offer a prayer and then we'll have a closing song.
Hey, thank you, Ish, and I've been listening intently about all the voices from the heart, which is really the heart is where we are all returning to. The rumblings that some are talking about is that energy and that trembling that happens when we step forward. You know, when we still go out and blueberry pick, we still go out in the water, even when our body is rumbling or trembling. It's an awakening and reconnecting to all life and that relationship. I so loved the moose story and how those sacred contracts are still present with us, with our ancestors, the 2-legged and the 4-legged and the plant world, the water world. So my prayer is going to be, or my Thanksgiving word is going to be in my language to acknowledge the voices from the heart of tonight, and the young man that was represented here, Ryder, is the voice that carries forth from the heart of our matriarchal cultures. Chijahamijina Akchikisuk Mi wedam dandiligan muyek mogiganodi Mi wedam dandiligan muyek mimajuahan Dandil mawaliek Dandilusit hamu tieg ebidel tieg Dandilusit hamu adegadiek Mi waket kik dandesichik Mimajueno, sit Gunjanina, sit Gujijina, sit Labsit Mahamigel, and Kidno Mahamigel. Dandesit Weesus, Dandesit Nimaj, Dandesit Sisip, Nego, Maui Majulti, Maui Apohan Marutine, Ahankoya Rutine, Dandeli Galuxit Kupla, Dande Sit Hamu, Akchigiso, Kisidegejit, Nego, Abaji, Ulgijala Sultana, Nebida Ulti. Mena gisma ulo kuruhti desno, ahuna hat desno, melki gnakalan no ekadio. Uchitande sit mimajuin. Wegilali. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for asking me to offer and acknowledge our ancestors and all of us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Michelle, a song for closing?
And just before the song, I think that we should have at the end those organizers just stay behind.
Sure.
Okay.
Please.
I'd like to thank very much Mariah and Ryder and Claudette for speaking this evening. I'm glad this issue is being put forward. I'm glad to hear from the Mi'Kmaw people and their issues that are being put forward. We do have a lot of work, and I know a lot of people are getting tired. And I think the best we can offer is a song that's a lullaby. And I think all of us could use a lullaby just to rest for one evening before we go back to work tomorrow and fight for our rights again. So between the two of us, Mariah, get your speaker on because we're singing together. Waiting for you.
Okay, I'm here.
All right. Hamba, 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 hey yo. Hamba, hey yo. Hamba, 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 hey yo. Hamba, hey yo, hey yo. Whale, sleep well this eve. Good night. Thanks for coming. Oh.
Aho, thank you
That
so
was
much.
beautiful.
And it is really hard to sing online together, so I muted myself because I love that song. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to close the meeting now. We have recorded it, and we will be posting it on the Writing Relations Facebook page for anyone who wants to watch it afterwards. And so we just thank you all very much with our hearts. And from our hearts, we express our solidarity and our love for you all. Walalan.
It was beautiful. Thank you.
Miigwech.
I'm so glad my daughter got to hear all of you.
Ah,
Evelyn, Marilyn, she's so beautiful, that baby of yours.
Oh, yeah.
She looks exactly like you.
I know.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank
And, you know,
you. Thank you so much.
Young Guamas in the Gawab Min.
I
Gizagian. Miigwech.
look forward to meeting all of you.
Yeah, same here. Miigwech Rider, Gizagian.
Thank you very much, everyone. Kazagin Kukum.